Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you all to Prague, to a EU Secure and Innovative Digital Future Conference organized by the Czech National Cyber and Information Security Agency, the Czech Ministry of Industry and Trade, and the Czech Office of the Government in cooperation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs under the Czech presidency of the Council of the EU. Last month and years showed us how vulnerable we are due to increased interconnectivity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the digitalization increased rapidly. The global use of services such as video conferencing has grown tenfold. By 2022, the annual internet traffic is estimated to increase by 50% from levels of 2020. And at the same time, the number of cyber attacks is increasing accordingly to estimates from the third quarter of this year by more than 30%. So there is no doubt that ensuring cyber security of state and citizens is essential in today's world. And that is also why it is a key political priority of the Czech presidency of the Council of the EU. That is why now I give the stage to Petr Fiala, Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, who is going to open this two-day conference by a pre-recorded video speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, dear guests, welcome to EU Secure and Innovative Digital Future, the main event of the Czech presidency dedicated to cybersecurity and digital agenda. Cybersecurity is essential today. Our society is more and more dependent on digital communication, and this dependence will only grow in time. The digital space is home to not only communication, commerce and social life, but also to conflicts and strategic competition. In terms of cybersecurity policy, my country has been an early adopter. We are also actively contributing to global cooperation. I would like to highlight one topic which has been our priority and which will also be discussed today: the ICT supply chain security. Recently, sophisticated attacks have been increasing. We need to be better prepared. The resilience of our technologies affects the resilience of our society. Therefore, I am glad that the Council has adopted conclusion on ICT supply chain security under the leadership of the Czech presidency. The war in Ukraine has caused a further shift in our strategic and security environment. There are regular cyber attacks targeting both Ukraine and Western countries, including critical infrastructure. Like many countries in Europe, our cyberspace has been heavily hit by Russian war propaganda involving us directly in the hybrid war. We have to fight these attacks. United, we prosper; divided, we fall. We also need to consider how to use cyberspace to make life better for people, how to protect our human rights and personal data. It is not easy, as too much regulation hinders innovation. To make it the right way, we need an effective dialogue with stakeholders and social partners. The data is the centerpiece of digital economy. We need to develop and implement fair data policies to support meaningful data sharing and to enable trusted cross-border data flows. However, we cannot succeed on our own. We should aim for building resilience through open strategic autonomy, cooperating with our partners. Transatlantic cooperation with the US is crucial. The Trade and Technology Council is a promising platform for dialogue on convergence of our policies. Likewise important are digital partnerships with Japan, Singapore and South Korea. Together with our friends, we are building resilience and focus on global matters of technology. We know that protecting an open internet is essential to the whole world. Dear guests, cybersecurity remains a priority to the European Union and to our presidency. I am proud that the Czech Republic is organizing this major event focusing on cybersecurity and digital innovation. I hope this conference will inspire you. Thank you for joining us, and I wish you a wonderful experience.
An opening speech from the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, Petr Fiala. Also at European level, the cybersecurity is being addressed. Most recently, in mid-September 2022, the Commission presented a proposal for a Cyber Resilience Act with the aim to bolster cybersecurity rules to ensure more secure hardware and software products. And I'm pleased to share with you a video message from the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who will tell us more from the EU perspective.
Prime Minister Fiala, dear Petr, thank you so much for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, there are two parallel wars going on in Ukraine. One is a very traditional war with troops fighting to gain control of roads, bridges, power plants. The other one is the cyber war that Russia tried to launch since February against Ukraine's satellite communications, its government service, against its critical infrastructure, both in the traditional and in the cyber field. Ukraine's resistance has stunned Russia and the world. Ukraine's cyber defenses have effectively repelled all attacks and kept the country's digital infrastructure up and running. Ukraine's recent cyber success is encouraging. But it also tells us that digital wars are not the future. They are being fought right now, right here in Europe. So Europe must be prepared. Building a secure digital future is today's task, and it is getting more and more urgent. So today I would like to mention three crucial strands of our action to secure our digital economy. The first one is on physical infrastructure, the second on cybersecurity, and the third on supply chains. Let me start with my first point. The attacks on Nord Stream show how fragile our critical infrastructure can be. And gas is not the only raw material that is flowing on the bottom of the sea. Our economy relies massively on international data flows, carried by undersea cables, not only for island member states, from Ireland to Malta and Cyprus, or to link Scandinavia to the rest of Europe, but every year the dense cable networks that cross the Atlantic and the Mediterranean carry essential data for Europe's trade with the world. No infrastructure is more critical than such subsea data cables. And that is why I have presented a plan to fast forward Europe's work on the resilience of our most critical entities. It goes from stress testing our infrastructure to making better use of our satellite surveillance capacity. And beyond the immediate steps, we need to keep working on diversification of routes and technologies. That is as vital for our data flow as it is for our energy supplies. Second, on cybersecurity. Our proposal on cybersecurity for critical sectors, the so-called NIS2 directive, is about to become law. Its core idea is precisely to address all hazards against our networks, from physical damage to cyber attacks. So we are working now with member states to shift to this new approach without delay. And for this, we will provide additional resources to member states, for instance, to test their cyber resilience or to access cyber professionals in case of a major attack. And we will create a European Cybersecurity Operations Center This will coordinate with national centers so that we can detect threats more quickly and better share information across our union. And third, the last few years have been a massive stress test for some critical supply chains. For instance, when the pandemic shut down chips factory in East Asia, entire production lines came to a standstill here in Europe. I have always believed in global free trade, but a situation where entire critical sectors rely on one or two suppliers is neither sustainable nor secure. And that is why we launched the European Chips Act 1 year ago, to increase our chips production by 4. The next step is the European Critical Raw Materials Act. We will diversify our supply chains and strike new deals with reliable suppliers. And we will identify strategic projects all along the value chains, from refining, for example, and processing to recycling. Because access to raw materials is essential to secure our digital future. So, distinguished guests, a secure digital future requires strong cyber defense, but also much more. It requires secure infrastructure, reliable partners, resilient supply chains, and this is all what Europe is working on. And I know this is also what you will discuss in Prague today. So let me wish you a very fruitful conference, and thank you very much for having me.
Key points from the President of the European Commission, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen. At the first day of our conference, we'll focus on topics of supply chain security. The aim is to look ahead and discuss regulatory, strategic and policy implications of supply chains and their impact on security of critical infrastructures and critical technology in the context of national security. Hence the title Prague Cybersecurity Conference 2022, which follows on the previous Prague 5G Security Conference. The second day will also be a hybrid conference and will cover mainly the areas of secure development of artificial intelligence and data economy in the EU, and has the title Towards Secure and Innovative Ecosystem. But now back to the topic of today, being the supply chain security. A supply chain attack is an emerging kind of threat that impacts customer or another partner through a supplier or a vendor. And according to a recent survey in the US, more than 3 in 5 companies were targeted by software supply chain attacks in 2021. So the topic chosen by the National Cyber and Information Security Agency is more than actual. And now I welcome here the director of the National Cyber and Information Security Agency, Mr. Lukáš Ginter.
Your Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, Dobrý den, good morning. Please let me follow up on the kind words of the Prime Minister and the President of the European Commission. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the conference EU Secure and Innovative Digital Future, a major event of the Czech presidency of the Council of the European Union. I'm delighted that our invitation was accepted by hundreds of participants from more than 50 countries all around the world, who arrived today physically or join us virtually. To all of you, welcome. We are meeting in times when the security situation, especially in Europe, remains serious. This is not least due to the unprecedented and ongoing Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. More than ever, we see the importance of international cooperation of unity of organizations, such as the European Union and NATO, and of building strong partnerships in Europe and globally. I'm proud that this conference represents a forum for promoting such cooperation and further strengthening our collective resilience. We will focus on a broad range of topics. Today, we start with cybersecurity. The Prague Cybersecurity Conference follows up on the tradition of the Prague 5G Security Conference. I'm very proud that the outcomes of previous iteration, the Prague proposals, were endorsed by countries around the world. This way, they contributed to the development and adoption of new policy frameworks in the field of 5G network security, supplier diversification, and emerging and disruptive technologies. Tomorrow, we will dive more into digital matters, such as the secure development of artificial intelligence and data economy. Both days will be connected by one essential theme, and that is the need to rethink the way we ensure security in the face of current and future threats and challenges. The Russian invasion of Ukraine was a wake-up call to eliminate our dependencies on authoritarian regimes, whether in energy or cybersecurity. We simply cannot wait for the further worsening of relations with other authoritarian states to realize the severity of the supply chain threat and our vulnerability to it. We need to reconsider our mindset, clarify our European strategy, and bolster the resilience of our digital backbone for the long run. The interconnected Europe of the future will only be as secure as the insecure technologies on which it is being built. Cybersecurity was chosen as one of the top 5 political priorities of our ongoing presidency, and we have focused our attention on ICT supply chain security within this priority. I'm pleased to announce that under the Czech presidency, 27 member states agreed on additional steps to strengthen our resilience, consider our vulnerabilities, and reduce our dependencies in the EU Council conclusion on ICT supply chain security. I see this as a great achievement of all of us in the EU and an inspiration to others. The topic of supply chain security was not chosen at random. Over the past years, we witnessed many devastating attacks that were successfully carried out through the supply chain. SolarWinds, Mimecast, Kaseya, to name but a few. The trend of using this vector of attack by different threat actors will undoubtedly continue to increase, and we must be prepared for that. Supply chain security is a complex issue, and various technical and non-technical measures can contribute to it. First of all, we should review our critical and strategic supply chains. Only the trustworthy suppliers could be accepted to our digital backbones. I'm glad that many countries, including the Czech Republic, are currently working on this. However, we cannot stop there. The nature of threats evolves along with the capacities of our adversaries. We need to continuously re-evaluate the security of supply chains and focus on new and emerging technology in this context. But we also need to monitor and analyze the situation and properly adapt our measures to the changes as quickly as possible. Continuous discussion and cooperation with industry is also essential. Some cyber and technical challenges simply cannot be fixed by governments alone. We must engage strategically and practically with key players from the private sector, because it is simply not just about picking reliable suppliers for our infrastructure. Our vision should be to increase transparency, responsiveness, and resilience across the entire supply chain ecosystem. Therefore, my aim is to follow up on this debate at the global level today, to present our national and European perspectives and to confront them with the perspectives of our partners across the world. I believe that only by having such discussions, questioning things we take for granted, and learning from each other, we can move forward towards a more secure future. For this reason, we will discuss today the main risks and strategic implications of supply chain attacks, but also suitable tools and solutions to further enhance our security, looking at our strategic infrastructure. Let's use this global forum of like-minded partners the best we can to share ideas and inspire each other. Your Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all fruitful discussion and plenty of food for thought.
Lukáš Kinter, the Director of the National Cyber and Information Security Agency, who opened the first day of the conference. And we also have here Estonian Minister of Entrepreneurship and Information Technology, whose main topics are e-government, digitalization and innovation, and of course, cybersecurity. Let me welcome here Christian Järvan and ask him for his opening speech.
Hey guys, good morning, nice to see you. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about supply chains and especially that what is regarding ICT. And so probably I'm going to do a small introduction on the problems. You all know about them, but just to clear things up is, of course, in 2020, we had the SolarWinds incident in the US where actually thousands of companies were affected with this. And we saw also Kaseya attack. Their software was being used in more than 17 countries. And we have a common element with these attacks, that actually those guys who are responsible for the security actually didn't pay the price. We saw how consumer goods stores actually stopped working because somebody else in the supply chain had made a mistake. So it's becoming harder and harder to distinguish like where is the next hit going to be. I think it's a lot of similarities with the crises. So raise your hand if you saw COVID coming. Yeah. The same thing is going to happen with supply chains, because I think I'm skipping to the end, but it all will make sense in the end, is that we will never see where, because the supply chains are so mixed, and the supply chains are getting, let's say, constant updates, then then actually it's really hard to distinguish and analyze where the next hit is going to be. So maybe the answer is actually a good parallel is what the Minister of IT in Singapore said on cybersecurity. Presume that you're already being breached. So presume that already your supply chain is, has a weakness in it and something is going to go bad. And preparing for it is probably not regulating everything and making super tight, but actually having a team who's ready to get involved, having alternatives in place. But yeah, now continuing with the speech is some types of risk that we have is, it's not only malicious intent from unknown hackers. Sometimes the problems arise from actually the products themselves. We see that some companies are leaving backdoors to their products, vulnerabilities that are meant to be there. And I think this says two things for us. First off, in the EU regulations, never break the crypto stuff. Like, if you leave a backdoor, you will never know who is after you. And the second one is that because there are companies who are willingly actually making backdoors to their software, their hardware, then and they're updating their software and hardware all the time, it's really hard to take notice. And so far, I think it's more important to look where the companies are coming from. So it's the systemic approach behind the companies. If there's a crime organization behind it, or maybe a country that has really strategic interests and also maybe not democratic values, sometimes it's hard to separate those from crime organizations, but that it is what it is. So I think I want to share with you the Estonian experience. We looked at actually closer into our telcos and what hardware they're using and software. And hypothetically, I can tell you about the case where, yes, a company is using maybe not so trustworthy hardware, and maybe they can do analysis on it. Is it safe or not? Not in Estonia, but in the UK, for example. But that's a one-off thing. If the next software updates comes, we'll never know what's in it. And it's super expensive, it's super slow. Does it make sense? Probably not. So regarding legislation, I think it's much more about looking what's the system behind the companies that we get our products from. And it really is aligned with EU toolbox for 5G. So I would recommend looking into that and taking the principles from that, because yes, the other side of the coin is that if we try to regulate too much, especially like this kind of technical solution is okay, this kind of is not, and when technical solutions update every week, then it becomes pointless. So actually, I would like to point out also cooperation, not because I'm a politician in the EU who always talks about cooperation like a big cloud. Okay, not using the cloud word here, but something fuzzy. Then it's actually, we have use cases where putting this kind of approach to risks have worked. So our main agency for cybersecurity, let me give you an example, working together with private sector. Of course, fintech and infrastructure, they are known to getting attacked. They're quite okay. For example, our media organization, Contact Act, and because we had been ready for these kinds of risks, then we had a team who would go in and take care of that. They had the right tools, the right mindset. So we had a contingency plan. Let me give you an example with working together with universities. Actually, those guys came from Czech Republic. It was the year 2017, and they pointed out serious problems in electronic ID. That also affected Estonia, actually. But due to that, we had alternatives in place. We were able to fix this kind of situation in 2 weeks. So working together with scientists works. Working together with scientists works. It's not just about grant money, it's actually having real results. All right, moving on. Cybersecurity investments, it's a hot topic. I think the more we go into the future, we have more services online, we have more data online, we have more to protect. So that also, in essence, means that it's reasonable to actually make the security budgets bigger on IT. I see there's the global spending on cybersecurity is about 0.1% of GDP. In EU, it's roughly 0.03%. So for some countries, and let's just say it's low. Maybe it's a calculated risk. Probably it's not. But you shouldn't spend like the mind flow or mindset shouldn't be that we need to spend more because we need to spend more. It's actually acknowledging the risk that we have and having real contingency plans to address those risks, not to just regulate private sector and kill it off in essence. But yeah, assessing what is spending on cybersecurity and what doesn't qualify it, it's hard. Like we see that the most important things is to keep your legacy software updated, but that's just proper hygiene. Does it qualify as cybersecurity spending? You can argue that. So in conclusion, I think the most important thing is actually both on the citizens level, on the companies level, on the governmental level, to acknowledge that there's a real risk. And instead of hiding your head in the sand, make actions on it. And the actions probably isn't just to, what is the safety software, make everyone use it. That's not the way to go. It's in the private sector's interest to have the best solutions. We can see basic market failures there, that there's a market failure of know-how. Assessing the risks and taking actions, what are the best actions? I think this is the place where public sector actually has a justified case where to use public money and actually get involved as the backup. So yeah, get your team ready for the next crisis, because you will never know what's the next crisis, but you can have communication layers in place. You know where the qualified people are. That's good, because regulation doesn't only kill bad stuff, it also kills the good stuff. And like if you just kill off our, for example, fintech with regulation, it's super safe, but just actually companies from outside of Europe will take over and do their own stuff anyways. And my final note, to be real honest, if your organization in the EU or your company still uses Kaspersky, it's like hiring Red Army for security guys. And that's it. Thanks.
Warning from the Estonian Minister of Entrepreneurship and Information Technology, Christian Järvan. Yes, when he's spoken about the amount of data we share on the internet, I was impressed while reading that it would reach 4.8 zettabytes this year. Not that I could imagine what it is like, but I read that stored on the DVDs, it would circle the Earth 6 times. Wow, okay. And then it's very understandable that it's difficult to predict where the next crisis or the next attack will come from. I like to use this in the economics field, that we never know which the next crisis will be and where it will come from. But it's as well valid for the security field. But now we add a global perspective to the topic, as there are many ways of addressing supply chain security challenges. We can look at the Japan with their guidelines for ICT product security, or Singapore or Finland with their product labeling schemes. We start with a view from very far away. Claire O'Neill, Australian Minister of Home Affairs and Minister for Cybersecurity, will greet us from a pre-recorded video.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the Czech Republic's National Cyber and Information Security Agency, the Ministry of Industry and Trade, and the Office of the Government for the invitation to address you today, and I truly wish that I could be there in person. It's fitting that the EU Secure and Innovative Digital Future Conference takes place during the presidency of the Czech Republic in the Council of the European Union. And the issues that this conference is addressing affect every country in every continent. As Australia's Minister for Home Affairs, my principal role is about national security and national resilience. Australia's prosperity and security is underpinned by how well we protect our cyber and digital domains and our critical infrastructure. In Australia, a new government was elected in May, and one of the first decisions of that government was to elevate the Ministry for Cybersecurity role into our cabinet. And so in May 2022, I became Australia's first cabinet minister with responsibility for cybersecurity. One of our biggest priorities is protecting and securing Australia's critical infrastructure, and of course that includes critical technology. We have really strong engagement in Australia with our owners of critical infrastructure. In Australia, we've established something called the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Centre. We call it the CISC within my Department of Home Affairs. And this is the part of government that's principally responsible for managing the very complex issues that come with critical infrastructure protection. So the CISC engages with the owners and operators of critical infrastructure on security, and it helps drive our country's approach to critical infrastructure protection. And we're really proud of the way that this model has worked. We have that strong engagement and partnership with the sector, but also really good laws that help us work with that sector to improve standards. So over the past 12 months, the Australian Parliament has passed a bunch of amendments to something called the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act. And this is the main piece of legislation that we use to drive the issues that you're discussing in the conference at the moment. So one of the things that Act allows me to do as Minister for Home Affairs is require owners and operators of Australia's critical infrastructure assets to comply with specific cybersecurity obligations. So let me put that in plain English. As Minister in Australia, I get to set what the minimum cybersecurity standards are for companies who own critical infrastructure assets, and over time lift those cybersecurity obligations to make sure that across our economy as a whole, we're actually building a hardened infrastructure environment across all businesses that work in these sectors. So these entities work in really close partnership with government to make sure that they're in a position to be able to respond in the event of a significant cyber incident. Another part of this Security of Critical Infrastructure Act is mandatory cyber incident reporting. So these are obligations that sit on critical infrastructure providers to make sure that government has a really good flow of information about the cyber threats that critical infrastructure faces. And of course, as many of your own countries would be doing, we then take those threats and have a really strong program of making sure we support other businesses and organisations to proactively manage those threats. We're collecting this information so we can help industry to really be better prepared and try to break that cycle of threat. The Australian government can also use its powers under the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act to help our critical infrastructure assets when they're struck by a nationally significant cyber incident that they're unable to deal with on their own. So actually what the Australian government is allowed to do is go into these companies or organisations when there is a big problem and assist them on the technical side in a lot of detail, sit in their organisations and try to help them manage those threats. And all this is done, of course, in recognition that when security of our critical infrastructure is attacked, this actually has significant national security impacts on our country as a whole. So our approach is not intended to be in any way draconian. This is very much about the partnership that we share with these companies in making sure that we protect Australia and that our country remains safe. Another part of this regime is to work with industry through the Trusted Information Sharing Network, or the TISN. The TISN is where members of the critical infrastructure community collaborate to strengthen the resilience of their organisation and industry sectors against all kinds of hazards, cyber and otherwise. The combined approach of engagement and regulatory reform has helped boost Australia's ability to secure critical infrastructure against cyber threats, and it's absolutely genuinely increased our overall cybersecurity as a country. Now, we don't have done this perfectly, and I think every country in the world is sort of going on their own journey on these matters, and Europe has very much been a leader on some of these critical issues, and I'm really interested to hear as outcomes of the discussion that you're having at the moment about how your countries are thinking of moving forward on this very fast developing area of public policy. Something that's very clear about cybersecurity is that we just can't do this on our own, and in Australia we actually would face very similar, in fact in some instances exactly the same cyber threats as some of you are facing in your countries, same cyber actors, same type of technological issues. And what that means to me very clearly is that international partnerships are at the core of us addressing and solving these problems in our own countries. So the Australian government is in the process at the moment of developing a new Australian cyber strategy to build a resilient Australian cyber ecosystem for 2030. It's going to be a whole of nation effort, and it's going to rely on partnerships between government, industry and the community. The new cyber strategy gives us the opportunity to reboot Australia's cybersecurity settings. And we want to have a really good conversation with all of the people who are involved in us protecting critical infrastructure and cybersecurity in this country to make sure that we can get some really, really powerful improvements as we confront the kind of difficult decades that we face into. We all need to build our collective resilience so that our citizens and businesses can focus on unlocking the shared prosperity that comes with stable, open, secure digital ecosystems. Resilient global supply chains for critical technologies are a cornerstone of prosperity and national security. Australia welcomes cooperation on access to viable, secure and trusted suppliers in the global technology ecosystem. To promote supply chain diversity and security, Australia released its critical technology supply chain principles to assist government and businesses of all sizes to securely adopt and develop critical technologies. The principles are co-designed with industry and will help those who adopt them to make more informed decisions about the integrity of their suppliers and the transparency of their own products and services. We welcome the opportunities the EU Secure and Innovative Digital Future Conference presents for international cooperation. We look forward to an exchange of best practices to shape a trusted technology ecosystem characterised by diversity, transparency and security by design. We're working with our partners in the Quad, India, Japan and the United States to deliver on the Quad leaders' vision for a free, open and resilient Indo-Pacific. And we are all cooperating on common cybersecurity issues and improved cyber capabilities to combat sophisticated cyber threats. Quad partners emphasised this commitment in May this year through joint principles aiming to guide cybersecurity cooperation between the partners and to support cybersecurity uplift across the Indo-Pacific region under the Quad Cybersecurity Partnership. We are focusing our collective efforts on improving cybersecurity protections for our nation's most important critical infrastructure. There is, of course, a lot more work happening across the Australian government in these areas. My department's partnering with an organisation called Data 61, which is a digital specialist arm of Australia's national science agency, the CSIRO. We will be establishing a world-leading 6G security research and development program to deliver foundational research to support the development of 6G telecommunications standard. I can't wait to hear about the vitally important discussions from the conference. A trusted, free flow of data outside the EU is obviously a priority for Australia, and we will continue to lead by example in this area. I look forward to continuing Australia's engagement with all of you on these issues and more as we move into an even more secure and even more innovative digital future globally. Thank you so much.
Claire O'Neill, Australian Minister of Home Affairs and Minister of Cybersecurity, who shared the Australian approach to cybersecurity with us. And last but not least, we get to know the perspective of North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Let me share with you the video message from Mirza Joanna, NATO Deputy Secretary General.
Thank you, Mikala. It's a great pleasure to join you all today, especially appearing with such distinguished fellow speakers. I'm only sorry I cannot be with you in person. Czechia is a valuable NATO ally and EU member state. And under your presidency of the EU Council, we have an excellent opportunity to discuss our shared security, the challenges and threats we face, and what we collectively can do about them. This year, the world was shocked when President Putin's forces invaded peaceful, independent, sovereign Ukraine. At NATO, we are shocked but not surprised. For years, Russia has engaged in an increasingly aggressive pattern of behavior. From the invasion of Georgia and the illegal annexation of Crimea, to cyber attacks, assassinations on Allied soil, and massive disinformation campaigns. And now, the war in Ukraine. From 2014, NATO has responded with the biggest strengthening of our collective defense since the Cold War, with forces in the east of our alliance, for the first time, with greater resilience and higher readiness. And we have supported Ukraine so it could better defend itself if Russia decided to invade again, which on February 24th, they did. Our old assumptions of perpetual peace and prosperity are not as certain as they were just a year ago. At the same time, we are also facing the continued threat of terrorism, nuclear proliferation, sabotage of our infrastructures, the climate crisis, and we are only just getting over the worst of the pandemic. No country or organization can face these challenges alone. We need even stronger multilateral institutions and even deeper international cooperation, including and especially with the European Union. Because we are doing more than defending our nations. We are defending our democratic values, the sort of societies we want to live in, that we want our children to live in. In the country of Václav Havel, I know this resonates stronger and stronger. Free, open societies where we are encouraged to think, speak, and act as we choose. As many of you, I grew up under communism in Romania. I know that I remember vividly the invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968. We know what happened and what followed: communist domination, fear, repression, stagnation. It is the same alternative that is being promoted today by our authoritarian competitors. In few areas is this battle of ideas more fiercely fought than in the field of technology. Today, the competition for strategic advantage and the development and use of emerging and disruptive technologies is intensifying. The Communist Party in China, the Congress, President Xi reiterated his ambition for his country to prevail in the fight to develop strategically important tech. This is not a benign competition. If authoritarian ideals were to prevail, our very freedom would be at stake. We all have a responsibility not to let that happen. At NATO's Madrid summit in June, allies agreed on our new strategic concept to guide NATO over the next decade. It describes the strategic environment, it reaffirms our values, and will help NATO adapt to this world, including our approach to innovation and to working with others. If you have not done so yet, I encourage you to read the strategic concept. For the development and use of new technologies, our concept emphasizes the importance of adopting principles of responsible use that reflect our values and human rights. And this sets us apart from our competitors. It is why shaping the standards and norms of the development and use of new technologies is so important. Our ambition is for NATO to set the gold standard on the ethical use of new technologies in defense, not just within the alliance, but around the world. To this end, over the past year or so, we have published specific strategies on areas including data, AI, and space. When it comes to cyber, the lines between peacetime, crisis, and conflict are blurred. Cyberspace is a contested space with constant friction and activity. And malign actors seek to degrade our critical infrastructure, interfere with our government services, extract intelligence, steal intellectual property, and impede our military activities. We need to be proactive. One-off cyber attacks, long-term cyber campaigns, and the cumulative effects of malicious cyber activities can all have a strategic impact. NATO is a platform we can share our concern, exchange national approaches and responses, and help each other, and consider our collective response. Just a few weeks ago, the North Atlantic Council strongly condemned the recent cyber attack on Albania's national information infrastructure. Albania and other allies attributed the attack to Iran. It was also designated to destabilize and harm the security of an ally and disrupt the daily lives of citizens. This is an example of NATO allies coming together, sharing information and responding with a collective response. Going forward, we are working to enhance civil-military cooperation, expand our partnership with the private sector, and yes, strengthen our societal resilience. Doing this demands ongoing engagement across the triple helix of governments, the private sector, and academia. NATO cannot do it alone. We need our partners, especially the European Union, and we need to work in totally new ways. In recent years, NATO and the EU have taken our cooperation to unprecedented levels on issues like military mobility, maritime security, stability in the Western Balkans, and yes, cyber defense. We have stepped up our cooperation to address vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure and to tackle disinformation, climate change, and emerging and disruptive technologies. Our cyber defenders share information about cyber threats and take part in each other's exercises. Later this month, for example, EU experts will take part in NATO's flagship cyber coalition exercise in Estonia. This close cooperation is so essential because close to 600 million Europeans live in a NATO country. And once Finland and Sweden join, NATO will protect around 96% of the European Union population. Together we have an extraordinary opportunity to think creatively about our security and to shape our future together. We want the disruptors from all areas of life, from public, private, and academia. We need people who think and act differently. In NATO, we are now in the business of uniting disruptors to shape a peaceful future. Next year, 2 big NATO initiatives will go live. The Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, or DIANA, and DIANA will support innovators to develop commercially successful companies that also serve an important security need. And the €1 billion NATO Innovation Fund, the world's first multi-sovereign venture capital fund, will provide financing to cutting-edge startups developing dual-use technologies. Both are radical departures from the old ways we did business in order to tackle the hard security problems we are facing today. We need to bring together Europe and North America's best and brightest minds from industry and academia to shape our future. A secure, peaceful, and prosperous future based on our values, working together, thinking creatively, upholding our values. This is how we will shape our digital future and help protect our societies. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck in your organizations and your endeavors. Thank you.
A call from Mirza Don, NATO Deputy Secretary General. We've opened the 2-day conference and the first day called Prague Cyber Security Conference 2022. And yes, thank you. I have a company here, which is a mobile industrial robot coming from the Technical University in Ostrava. And it can not only bring you some refreshments, that is very handy, especially after an hour of talking, but it will serve you through the breaks. You may meet it in the foyer. You may even visit the stand of the Technical University of Ostrava, where they will be more than happy to show you more of the technologies, not only this mobile industrial robot, but also 3D printing and much more. So don't hesitate in the foyer to visit their stand. And I also thank to the Technical University of Ostrava for preparing the exhibition. Thank you for the drinks. And now we are going to have a look on what the main risks stemming from insecure supply chains of critical infrastructure are. Different countries